Now, in the Western tradition, those are really three major thinkers of thinking. They really, they came up with very interesting idea. I recently spent a lot of time on the third guy, and then actually I wrote an article on his idea. It's one of amazing one. I read his articles and one of his very, very interesting book on that one. So this is John Locke and George Berkeley and David Hume, okay? Now, here's what they say, and you see that basically they live, in 16th and 17th century. And John Locke's idea is that all knowledge or ideas comes from experience. But there are two types of experience. There is inner experience, sensation you get through senses. There's outer experience that is a reflection that you use your mind and try to reflect on some things. So in this case, all ideas that we have are either from inner experience or from the outer experience. So in that case, we have experience, sensation, and reflection, and then we build the ideas, and then we put them together and establish the complex idea. That's his argument. So the example here, let's say you have a cup of water, water itself, and then you have the idea of the waters in your mind. So the question is the water, whatever is there, if we believe it's real, okay? Now when you're thirsty, you know for sure it's real, okay? So in this case, the question is that what is the concept of water in your mind, does it really correspond to the actual water? Meaning, are they the same thing or just the way you perceive that one? Locke will say that, Locke's argument is that the idea of water comes from the perception of the water, and the idea is actually matched to the reality. And the truth is, in his definition, is whatever you have, if it is correspond to the reality, that means it's the truth, otherwise it's false. Okay, that's his definition. Now, in Berkeley, and if you've been in US and in the University of California in Berkeley, it's come from this guy. And so Berkeley argues that, his theory of knowledge, he says that, now there is water itself, is reality, but there is the mind that have the idea of the water. He says that we know nothing about an object, about the water, beside the quality we perceive through senses. What is water? We'll say, I'm sorry, you can't know. But do you see water? Yeah, you say, you see the water, but what you see, will say, is what your eyes, with certain ability, take the picture and show it to you. So is it real? You say, there's no way for you to know that. So meaning that you can't really have access to the ultimate reality. So he argues that idea exists only in minds. All things that we have it are nothing but just idea. Therefore, all things exist in our mind as an idea in this regard. So this is what we call representational theories of perception. But in this case, that the epistemological thinking, speaking, like at Berkeley, they say that we have nothing but ideas of object. We establish our idea of object based on sensual data, and thus we only have our perception of objects, and we can never know if our idea of water corresponds to the reality of the water. Now the third guy dealing with the same question is David Hume. And the guy is really interesting guy, and the book I mentioned to you that he wrote the books, that's when I read it, An Inquiry Concerning Human Understanding. So he wrote the very, very interesting book just on human understanding and try to understand how we understand. And here's what he came up with. He says that no impression, no knowledge without impression. So all of knowledge is based on the impression of the external world on our senses. So he says all knowledge is derived from and limited to the appearances. What appears to us, that's really the knowledge comes from that. And then he says the appearances are presented to our perception. So it appears to us, and we have senses, we get the appearances. And the perceptions, he says, can be divided into two. The impression, which is a lively, vivid sensation, and it could be ideas, which is the copies of impression. So you first get the impression of some things, then you build your ideas of this perceived impression. So in this regard, he argued that all ideas are derived from impressions, and all the mind possesses is collection of perception. So basically means that we just perceive, and that's we get knowledge based on this one. Now, and he also categorized knowledge in two categories. He said there are two types of knowledge, that the knowledge relates to the relations of idea, the knowledge relates to the matter of facts. He put, let's say, disciplines like geometry, like arithmetic, logic, and algebra, as some field relate to the relations of idea. But then he says that this one is actually, they are certain, but they are not informational. But the second type is that the idea relates to the real world. He says this is those are meditative, but they are not certain. So like the sun will rise tomorrow, the chair is, let's say, red. He says this is some things about the matter of the fact that we want to know and want to know the meaning, but he says we can't be certain about it because this has come from the essential data, because we can't really be sure about our essential data. So again, that this is the things that he has about that. Now, the other things that Hume says, he says science is all about causation. So in a sense that he says, we try to really understand what caused the others. So, but he argues that in reality, there is no causation. It's just the way we perceive what he called the association as a causation, and he made very, very strong argument on that one. Again, it's really the whole idea, and so we don't have time, therefore we can really spend a lot on this one. Now, again, you can see there are a lot of confusion, right? So what is knowledge? How can we be sure about it? How we gain our knowledge? Now, one of the guys that was really, really confused on that one, it was Descartes. And he famously says, what was the phrase that most of you maybe know by heart? I think, yes? He says, I think, therefore, I am. So basically, the reason that he says, I think, therefore, I am, because he couldn't trust in anything. He says that, can I trust my eyes? And when he questioned, he realized that, no, actually, the eyes can deceive you. You cannot say, and that's what we know mirage is a good example, and even now the color that you see, let's say, the table has is a white, has a white color. No, actually, the color does not belong to the table. The color comes from the light. But your eyes show as if the table has the color. So in a sense that he argues that, no, you cannot trust your eyes, you cannot trust your ears, you cannot trust your touching, so what can you trust? So eventually, in his skepticism, he boiled down everything to the mind. He says that the only thing you can be sure about it is your own existence. Think as a thinking subject, so you can be doubtful about yourself, and that's how it starts. So in this case, that he basically tried to tell us how we can reach certainty. And he argues that, we can find a certain way to actually get the certainty in, and that certainty has to start from the self. Now, David Hume will say that, no, you can't be certain, but you have to actually believe about what you perceive, because there is no way for you to really be certain. So in a sense that, let's say, you live in a building now, scientifically speaking, there is no way for you to be certain that the building is not going to collapse in a minute. Now you might say there's a physical law and there's nothing wrong in the building. He will say that scientifically that you cannot rely on those physical laws 100%. And go and read the quantum physics to see how it tells you that there is no absolute certainty in a physical universe. It's just a probability of something happening. So in this case, Hume will say that it doesn't matter who you are, if you don't believe, you cannot live. He argues that you have to somehow believe that there are certain laws and the law is going to be same tomorrow and the building is going to stay as it is. So he says, but there is nothing can give you assurance it's going to be the case. So he argues that there has to be the belief to really live your life. So in Islamic sense, that we really look at it, the certainty of knowledge is we have this concept of ilm al-yaqeen, ayn al-yaqeen, haqq al-yaqeen, in the sense that how you can get the certainty through pure reasoning, ilm al-yaqeen, or through the empirical data that ayn al-yaqeen, you perceive something, or you see that they define the absolute certainty come through the haqq al-yaqeen, in the sense that basically you have the certainty without any doubt that goes beyond empiricism and beyond the rationalism in this regard. So what I did, this is the book that I mentioned to you, and I actually spent some time trying to understand that, and I came up with these books. Then I study a Turkish scholar called Said Nursi, and the book is called Said Nursi and Science in Islam, the Character Building through the Nursi's concept of Ma'nai Harfi. So in that book, basically, I came up with the 7 different dimensions of knowledge. That my argument is that the existing scientific approach deals only with the first dimension. So the first dimension is all about the instrumental knowledge. How can I understand an atom? And then once we understand that there is enormous power out there, I can disclose this one and, let's say, discover and invent atomic bomb and then win the war. That happened in World War II, right? If you know the competition between Nazis or Hitler and the Americans to actually be first to invent the atomic bomb, you see the whole purpose was to get the instrument to win the war, okay? This is what we call the instrumental knowledge. So one way is why we try to learn, because we can gain the better knowledge, better tool, and this tool can help us to control, or they can help us to access to the source of pleasure. So that's we call instrumental knowledge. But I have the other dimension, is the second dimension I call analogy dimension, that basically to be certain about any knowledge, that we need to use analogy to relate to the self. Meaning that unless we relate the new knowledge to the self, experiential knowledge, it seems like it just doesn't make any sense to us. So therefore it's really important to use analogy and to provide a second dimension. The third dimension is I call the hikmah dimension, or critical thinking dimension, and basically that you have the students to question what is presented to you, because you can't be sure until you really question and to see whether the knowledge is indeed a verified knowledge or not. And the fourth dimension I call the haqiqah dimension, or the truth dimension. That's really what is the ultimate reality, how you can gauge that one. And the fifth dimension I call the ma'rifah dimension, to really understand the true knowledge behind the reality. And the sixth one is the fitra dimension, in terms of really how it's related to the human nature. And the seventh one is the fadila, in terms of the virtue. Basically, my argument is that the education should not focus on the first dimension alone, should be designed in a way that can help individual not to gain the tool alone, also to help them how to be better human being. So meaning that it should really help them to gain some moral character lessons as well, that they can better utilize their potential. And with a group of scholars, we are working on some workbooks directly, developing curriculum for the middle schools and high school students to see how we can actually rewrite the scientific knowledge in a way that you can actually present a different dimension of the knowledge, not only the instrumental part of knowledge. So again, if we just summarize what we discussed so far. Yes, question? Yeah, Said Nursi is a Turkish scholar that he died in 1960. He's very famous in Turkey. Most people, almost everyone in Turkey know that. And he wrote whole collections of 6,000 pages books that basically, from Islamic perspective, on certain modern subjects that we deal with. But this is, again, I published several articles looking his ideas in terms of Islamic moral economy, and that's the books that basically is about Islamic epistemology based on some of the idea he has. Yes, so if we summarize, so again, the very first thing is that to really understand the importance of knowledge. Yes?
Just for these 7 dimensions that you mentioned now, do you have a correlation between each of them and which one is more important and what would happen if you skip one of these dimensions?
Yeah, I think, again, if you remember, I shared the book with you that's from Harvard professors. So if you skip that, you're going to create excellence in terms of technical excellence, but with no soul. That's the point. You can create a great successful person, but is not really human that you want to interact with. So if we are somehow different than robots, that you cannot just put an emphasis in terms of, let's say, certain technical skill to really empower students with that. So our argument is that you need to really provide other dimension and eventually to tell them how they can be a better human being in their life. Now, saying that, the approach that we're using now, the books that we're working on actually, we develop an approach that's applicable to people of any faith. We did not refer to any Islamic source directly, and actually New York publisher is going to publish that book, the series of the books, because our argument is that you don't have to be Muslims to really drive, to get this knowledge in this manner. You can, as long as you believe in God and see that the universe is a meaningful book, has certain message to you, that when you study, let's say, biology, you can learn some other lessons from biology as well. So our approach is that to see how we can include the other dimension into what I call dull and dry existing scientific knowledge that only emphasize this instrumental knowledge, that you go and just see how you can get good skills to be a good, let's say, expert in your field, but you don't really learn anything that is also useful and helpful for you as a human being. Again, that's our approach and our argument, and we try to really see how we can come up with some alternative books and curriculum to see that we can make the education more humane in this regard.
Can I understand you correctly? This is your proposal?
Yes.
Along with other people?
Yes.
Not based on Norsi?
Yeah, it is based on his, actually. It's based on him, but we derive from his writing. Yes, 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 yes. And we already write one book. We finished we call workbooks, called The Brain and Five Senses. So we look at the curriculum at the middle school and elementary school, and the subject they cover, we get the same subject, and then we actually see how we can represent it in the 7-dimensional way. And so we finished the first one, we're working on one on physics, one on chemistry. So we want to have one biology, one chemistry, one physics, to show that indeed the knowledge can be presented in a way that there is no duality. It's not like this is a religious knowledge, this is a scientific knowledge. That is, we argue, and this is the main argument in the book, that this is since the Enlightenment, that's what comes from the West. If you go and look at the golden age of Islam, that when the science was at the peak, there was no such separation. There was no like a science and religion, and it's basically, you will see those very, very great scientists, they are also very religious individuals because they didn't see really any differences between them. You see, they will publish a religious book and scientific book, and they were able to provide more integrated approach. But again, my point here is this. The argument here is that basically knowledge is, if the knowledge is what really we experience in life, that we really need to look at to see how we can bring some different dimension to the knowledge that we teach. I will share it with you that what students like about my teaching when I teach, and you will find out that's really, they always find something more than economics. I teach economics, but they will say it's very exciting because I don't want to teach just a dry instrumental knowledge. I try to connect to some other dimension. Like example, let's say one concept in economics is efficiency. Efficiency in economics is a very key concept. So when we teach efficiency, we define efficiency as to reach your objective in the best possible way using the least amount of resources. Now here's how I teach them. I say, okay, what is the most efficient student? I give it an option. The student who come to class and study 5 hours every day and get A. Or the student who comes study class and spend no other time at all other than doing assignment and get A. Who is most efficient? The second one. Why? Because that student basically spend the time in the class in the best way to learn the subject in class. So spending 10 hours and getting A, it doesn't mean you're efficient. So efficiency is about how I give it through the side. I say, okay, how would you define efficient in physics? Efficiency in physics can be defined in this way. If you want to go from the point A to the point B, what is the efficient way to go from point A to point B? The straight line. So straight line is the most efficient. This is the definition of straight line actually, right? The shortest distance between the 2 points is straight line. This is definition. But guess what? Then I tell them this. I say, you know what? This is also applicable to your real life as well. If you are straight and honest, you are more efficient to accomplish your goal in the long run. Then be honest in your life. Even though in the short run you might think that cheating gives you a better result, but we have ample evidence. I give an example. Go and study Amazon. See how Amazon within 20 years actually get to the top in the entire world. And you find out they have certain principles and ethics in their business. They absolutely cares about those principles more than profit, because they believe those are the principles that will bring them the profits in long term. So again, that's how my argument here. So in reality, I'm just teaching efficiency. But when I teach efficiency and touch to other subjects related to their life, now they get more excited. It makes more sense to them. They like it more. That's why I say that you can go and just talk about efficiency and write the formula and say how you do, what is efficiency in economics, and then see how we find the efficient outcome. But to me yes. Okay, we'll finish the last slide. So that's what I mean by it. So finally, let's look at this. So our argument is that basically knowledge is very important. So is there anything else but knowledge? No, actually everything is knowledge in life. Now, is there anything more important than knowledge? I don't think so. Is there anything else more powerful than knowledge? Now, you might say atomic bomb is more powerful. Guess what? You might work through knowledge, come up with another bomb that could be more powerful than atomic bomb. So again, knowledge is actually more powerful than that as well. Is there anything else even more pleasant than knowledge? Absolutely not. Why? Because whatever you say is pleasant is actually nothing but knowledge. It's your perceived of the experience. That's again is a knowledge as well. So in this regard, as long as the subject that we teach, if we can show the importance of the subject to the students, that we will be able to open the heart. And that's the very first steps, and that's our objective. Okay. So let's continue. So we have 1 more hour. Let's start with another exercise, brain exercise. Now, this is one of my favorite questions I ask. What would you like to be if you are given two choice, that if you're born again, that let's say for your entire life, you're gonna be, let's say, a beggar, but very happy beggar, or you're gonna be an happy bird. Huh? Happy bird. Huh? Happy beggar. Okay, let's do. Raise your hand. Happy beggars. Two only. Okay. Happy bird. See, more birds, right? Okay. So basically, that question is all about what we think is worth in life in terms of making us happy. So if you, let's say, if you don't want to be a happy beggar, basically you think that money is very, very important for happiness. If you don't have money, then what is the meaning of life? Let's be birds, that's better, okay? So, but the question is, who is happier? The one who is very poor but very knowledgeable? Or the one is very rich but very ignorant? Yes? So the one that who is rich in knowledge or the one who is rich in money, who is happier? Okay, see? Yes.
I want to say something. I said I want to be a happy beggar.
Mm-hmm.
Because at least I know what the human condition is, but I have no idea what the animal condition is. So for me, the question of whether a bird is happy or not is almost irrelevant. I don't know. I cannot know. But I said at least I know what the human condition is. So I'd rather be a human than be an animal. Basically, that's my choice. For the time being, like you said.
Correct.
You know, prompt what you actually act on and what you get to know.
Okay. Please, let's listen. Yes. Loudly, please.
Poor and rich are against each other, but knowledgeable and
Ignorant?
ignorant, they are not matching.
Okay.
They are not opposite to each other. Knowledgeable, you can say the other one is, I don't know, illiterate or unknowledgeable, but ignorant, because some knowledgeable people are also ignorant. Some knowledgeable people are also ignorant.
Yeah, but
Ignorant is not an opposite to knowledge. Ignorance is not opposite to knowledge.
yeah, I think that I got it. So in the sense that actually, I will say even further, the more knowledge you gain, the more ignorant you will become. Meaning that the more you will understand that you are ignorant actually. So you are more knowledgeable, of course, but you are more aware of your ignorance. So therefore, the more knowledge you gain, the more ignorant you will become in this sense. But what do we mean here? We mean that a life without really illiterate life, uneducated life, unlearning life, that's what we mean by ignorance, okay? So we don't mean that relative ignorance, okay? So the question here is that, you know, I'm an economist, and when we do the survey, I will show it to you that the whole entire market system is basically based on the concept that humans really care about money because they can use the money to get what they think will make them happier in life, okay? And we actually act based on this assumption, and we do all of our modeling and everything with this assumption in mind. But guess what?